Yes, I know. Yes. What is up, you muffin munching muggles? Welcome to Fiction and Reality, where we help you, yes, you become the most devilishly gifted human that you know you are and that you knew you always could be. Oh, why does it feel so good to be bad?
Gone on me. I was planning to go in completely, drop the sword down, and then completely cut it, completely gave them open. The sad truth is that they weren't even a challenge. I already had a full 5-stage plan ready to take everyone out, and anybody else who got involved, just in case.
So, you want to know how to turn your goody two-shoes goober into a dastardly devil? You want to know how to burn your toast, falafel your waffles? Well, that sounds like you're trying to be a little evil, and I like that. I like that a lot. So, how do you create the perfect villain, you ask? First, you must define their origins and establish the why of their goals. Now, what do I mean by why? Well, many will craft a backstory festering with a string of traumatic events that attempts to sow a seed of sympathy for the villain through the pores of the reader, or some won't even create a backstory at all, which I believe is an extremely dire mistake. You see, a perfect villain is dynamic with motives that are not simply stagnant in that they solely call the reader to hate them, simply for the evil acts and nothing else, but treads with moral ambiguity, fluid, and avoiding the prefecture of becoming evil simply for the sake of being evil. Your character mirrors the world, and fiction mimics reality. No matter which way you want to turn the lens, don't miss this vital chance to create an emotional link, forge a bond between that character and your reader. Let's move on to identifying the issues with being pure evil. Avoid the problem with pure evil. Let's say there's an evil waffle king. He's a pancakeist who simply hates pancakes because they aren't waffles. You know what I mean? And the only plight of the waffle king is to Lego their egos. He leads a band of good old boys, them good old waffle boys, who let's just say he's not a big pancake guy. Sure, you may arouse or stew a pot of resentment inside your reader's stomach, but what of the other emotional links you're missing? Is there a motive enough for them to consistently despise your villain from the exposition to the conclusion? Is the goal of you creating a villain simply to create something that your reader despises and casts stark criticisms upon? But why don't we start by asking why? Why does the Waffle King hate the pancakes, and why is he a pancakeist? Maybe the roles were reversed in his young years, where the pancakes were ruling with an iron spatula. The problem with pure evil is that it casts a narrow net on the spectrum of motives for your villain and shrouds the potential for the to forge an emotional bond between your reader and that villain. If you thread in some origin or backstory that calls the leader to question that morality of the villain's actions and both the morality of the protagonist's actions, who typically is the hero in most cases, then you open up the gate for your reader to do their own introspection and immerse and develop themselves into your ideal world. Let's take a look at a few examples of what pure evil is. Now, starting off with the Joker, he's more twisted in more than one ways, right? Holistically, he embodies the idea of pure evil with no remorse or moral code. His actions lack any clear motive behind causing mayhem, making him a symbol of uncontrollable chaos. He serves as an antagonist to Batman's order, if you want to call what Batman does order. At most times, pushing the cliche of evil as a force without boundaries or purpose. For example, in The Dark Knight, when he just burns a massive pile of money, demonstrating that he doesn't care about wealth or power, only chaos and destruction, right? It shows a lack of motive beyond causing suffering and embodying this caricature of pure evil. I guess some men just like to watch the world burn, huh? And let's take Sauron from The Lord of the Rings. Yes, the big floating eye thing overlooking Middle-earth. He's a dark lord whose only goal is to dominate and corrupt all of Middle-earth. His entire existence revolves around recovering the ring to enslave all of Middle-earth. His relentless pursuit for domination, without any regard for any individual of nuance, represents the archetype of evil that seeks only control and oppression. And we can take Doc Sidious, yes, Emperor Palpatine. The old wrinkly grandpa who sounds like he's one black and mild away from croaking and looks like he parks his ice cream truck near Little League baseball games and YMCA recreational centers. In Star Wars, he manipulates others purely to gain absolute control over the galaxy. His evil is rooted in thirst for power and willingness to destroy anyone in his path, displaying no hint of compassion or empathy. He is in essence and in nature a linear villain whose actions are driven solely by ambition and cruelty. Like for example when he manipulated Anakin Skywalker in betraying the Jedi Order, which led to massacre of countless number of Jedi, with the ultimate goal just simply being him achieving a totalitarian control over the galaxy. While frugal and tyrannical space emperor and a psychotic villain spurned with madness isn't necessarily to be avoided altogether, you should know that the prefecture of pure evil is best leveraged when it is nurtured and sharpened into something that's brimming with motive and ambitions that springs from a well-chiseled out backstory and origin, which allows something to be desired for your reader. And this veers us to what I believe is the key to creating the perfect villain: balancing the blades of evil. Now, we've all seen what evil looks like, but understanding the why, the moral gray paints a more realistic depiction of what evil actually is. Try asking yourself, what is a villain, and why must they always be associated with evil or bad or negative connotations? I want you to think outside the box. Here's my philosophy. In stories and simply in my worldview, the word evil is no better or worse than the word good. What decides the placement or label is the individual who weighs those perceived actions, thoughts, words, or characters within the cusp of their own scales of morality, attuned to their own perspective. They decide the magnitude, dependent on how bogged they are with power, of the consequences for the mark to bear. And if what I said sounds a little bit confusing, like some mumbo jumbo, think of it like this. Try creating your villain outside of the stricter sphere of evil and attempt writing them as if they're a hero of their own story. Then let your readers decide if their actions, words, or thoughts are justified. This leaves something to be desired. The perfect villain, in my opinion, is one who can be interpreted as morally gray and ambiguous, all while remaining loyal to their own code of ethics, paradigm, and worldview. And though their ideas have potential to be influenced, they live to antagonize the postulates that resist against their own. Let's check out some examples. We'll take Omni-Man, right? Doesn't he look like a loving and caring father and is active and involved in his son's life? So what makes him alluring is his complex motivations as a father and a conqueror for the Viltrumite Empire. His love for his son clashes with his duty to his species, forcing him into morally ambiguous actions. The tension between the brutal mission of planetary domination and his personal struggle creates a rich, fleshed out character with multiple layers of internal conflict. And this conflict ultimately led him to brutally murdering the Guardians of the Globe, shocking both the viewers and his son Mark. Despite the massacre, his motivation stems from his belief that the Earth must be prepared for Viltrumite rule, for its own advancement. The action shows the clash between his love for Mark and his cold logic, making him a morally complex character who justifies violence for what he believes is a higher cause. Eren Yeager. If you haven't seen Attack on Titan, I advise that you go watch it or read it. Right, but don't go past chapter 139. Eren transforms from a hero to a morally complex antagonist as his quest for freedom turns into a ruthless campaign for destruction. His tragic backstory is rooted in trauma of oppression. It drives his extreme actions as he believes wiping out his enemies is the only path to peace. His journey blurs the lines between heroism and villainy, making him a fascinating study of how desperation and idealism can lead to morally gray decisions. Even when he makes decisions to unleash a brigade of colossal titans to destroy the world outside of his island, the actions were merely driven by his desire to protect his homeland and secure freedom for his own people. Even the allies that were closest to him that condemned him for doing so. And also Killmonger. He's a villain with a deeply personal backstory that's rooted in trauma, loss, and a desire for justice. He was betrayed when his father was killed by T'Chaka, the king of Wakanda at that time. His father had been planning to use Wakanda's advanced technology to arm oppressed people around the world. And when Wakanda discovered this, T'Chaka confronted him and killed him to protect Wakanda's secrecy, and left his son, Killmonger, behind without any explanation or acknowledgement of his Wakandan heritage. Now, his radical methods for overthrowing global powers are overbearing, but Killmonger has a real sense of injustice, making him morally ambiguous. His duality of being both a victim of systemic oppression and violent revolutionary makes him a nuanced and relatable antagonist. And as a result, it breeds understanding in his decision to challenge T'Challa for the throne, intending to use Wakanda's advanced technology to once again arm oppressed people around the world. His experience as an orphaned, abandoned child fuels his rage, showing how personal trauma can help shape his worldview and drives his extreme actions, and gives the reader a window to sort of establish some sort of connection. And of course, the hero that they called a madman for telling the truth. Thanos. Thanos is from planet Titan, which was once a thriving world. And being a member of Titan, an inhabitant, he foresaw the overpopulation that would lead to his planet's ruin. So he proposed a strategy of eliminating half the population to ensure the survival of the rest. His idea was rejected for being too extreme, which I guess it was. But of course, what he predicted came to pass.
They called me a madman. And what I predicted came to pass.
This experience shaped Thanos' worldview, leading him to believe that his method of wiping out half of all life in the universe was the only way to prevent suffering and destruction, the same type that his own planet endured. And driven by this, he set out to gather all the Infinity Stones and snap his fingers to eliminate all of half of life from the universe. So after defining their origin and establishing goal and motive by developing their philosophy on account of some series of unfortunate events, maybe you can then consider how you'll introduce your villain. Focus on making a good impression. Will they emerge from a smoke-shrouded spaceship, toppled with piles of corpses? Will they depict deviance from society's standard of stability by hijacking a plane full of mercenaries? Or will they step out of some shadows of darkness? Whatever method you choose, this provides you the opportunity to set a tone and put forth a cascade of traits for your readers to digest and compass into forming their perspective of your villain. Also, maybe consider taking some developmental questions to mind. What are your villain's strengths and weaknesses, flaws and failures, methods that they'll use to achieve their goals? How do they view themselves and their own actions, their methods for striving for these goals and effecting change? What set their actions off into motion? Do they have any regrets or reservations? Any remorse? Do they believe in their own pursuits? Will their ideologies be influenced or changed, or will they stay the course? This ultimately allows you to devise a somewhat structured blueprint and framework to help discern and ferret out your character's philosophy, backstory, and the why of their motives and ambitions. Next, you could consider creating ties with the hero. Remember, the purpose of the villain is not to be evil for evil's sake, but to antagonize the postulates and morals of those seeking to uproot their own, which in most cases is the hero or protagonist of the story. You see, physical conflict is somewhat amusing, but wouldn't you be that much more invested in the story if you knew what each character was fighting for, leering on the edge of every chapter about what each one, be it hero or villain, will have to sacrifice as the story progresses to achieve what is most important to them? What are the hero's prerogatives? What is the villain's plight? They should generally speaking work against each other, but also to some degree share some similarities. Now, what are you doing here? Go forth and write about villains delectable enough to rival racist waffles, overcompensating men with strangely small mustaches, and tyrannical squirrels miserly enough to stuff their nuts inside of your grandma's garbage disposal. Please like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed, and be sure to tell me what villain best portrays you and why. I will leave a link of my socials in the description below. Go look at them. I am not asking you, I am telling you, I am telling you. And with that, remember, if you were ever lost in a forestry of words, strip your mind from fantasy and look to the window of the world, and there your mind will run free.